Good morning and welcome to Church Online. We're so glad you found us. Laverne Heights Presbyterian Church is an intergenerational family of faith committed to following Jesus, growing together, and sharing God's love with neighbors near and far. I'm Miss Megan, and I'm excited to share today's Bible story with you. Good morning, friends. Today our story is about one of Jesus' followers named Peter, who got sent to jail. But mostly, our story today is about church family and the power of praying together. We can pray lots of different ways. Sometimes I pray with my eyes closed, and sometimes I pray with them open. Sometimes I pray when I color, and sometimes I pray when I go for a walk. That's usually an eyes open kind of a prayer. Sometimes I pray alone, and sometimes I pray with other people. Sometimes I talk to God about how grateful I am, and I thank Him for all the things that He has done for me. And sometimes I ask Him for help for me or for somebody that I know that needs Him. Let's dive into our story and see what Peter's church family does when Peter gets sent to jail. Last week, Miss Peggy taught us about Barnabas and Saul and how they taught in a church in Antioch and how the believers began to call themselves Christians. This week, we're going to talk about King Herod and a man named Peter and Peter's church family. It was around this time that King Herod started to attack the believers, the Christians. He arrested some of the people who belonged to the church, and he even had one man named James killed. After that happened, King Herod arrested Peter too. He put Peter in prison, and he planned to kill him. Now, it's important for us to understand that Peter didn't do anything wrong. He was a Christian, and he was telling people about God.
Which, by the way, is not a crime.
Now, even though it seemed like Peter was alone in prison, he really wasn't. He wasn't really alone because he had a whole church family that cared for him. The church members gathered together, and they prayed and prayed and prayed for Peter. The night before Herod was going to have Peter put to death, Peter slept bound up with chains with 2 guards guarding him and more guards outside of the door. Suddenly, an angel from the Lord appeared, and a bright light shined into Peter's prison cell. The angel tapped Peter on the side to wake him up and said, "Get up quickly." The chains fell off, and the angel told Peter to put on his shoes and his coat and follow him. Peter followed the angel, past the 2 guards, and then past the rest of the guards, and out the gate, and out to a road. Now at this point, Peter thought he was having a dream or a vision. He didn't realize this was real. Peter and the angel were out at the road, and suddenly the angel disappeared. It was then that Peter realized this was really happening. It wasn't a dream. God had rescued him from Herod. So Peter went down the road to his friend Mary's house. Mary was a leader in the community. And many of Peter's friends, his church family, were gathered at Mary's house to pray for Peter. Peter knocked on the door, and a maid named Rhonda answered. She was so happy and a little overwhelmed to hear Peter's voice that instead of opening the door, she ran back into the house and announced that Peter was there. Now, all of the people knew that Peter was locked up in jail, so at first it was hard to understand what Rhonda was trying to tell them. They thought she must be crazy. but Rhonda insisted that Peter was at the door. So then the friends said it must be his angel. After all, Peter is in jail.
Or so they thought.
Or so they thought. Meanwhile, Peter kept knocking. Finally, the friends opened the door. Everyone was amazed. Peter told them how an angel of the Lord had rescued him. His church family was so happy that their prayers for Peter had been answered.
Prayer is such a wonderful thing. It is how we can talk to God and how we can listen for God. It's something we do that brings us closer to God. Think about the people that you talk to most. You get to know them pretty well, right? You have a relationship with them. It's the same way with God. We can have a relationship with Him through prayer. One way you can pray is to think of the word joy. The J stands for Jesus. You can thank God for sending Jesus and for all the other wonderful things He does for us. The O stands for others. You can thank God for the other people in your life, and you can pray for them. The Y stands for you. You can pray for yourself. You can thank God for the things in your life, or you can ask Him to help you with something that you are having a hard time with. But don't forget to sit quietly and listen too. I wonder what Peter was thinking when he was thrown in jail. I wonder if it was hard for him to fall asleep that night. I wonder how Peter's friends felt when he was taken away from them. And I wonder how it made them feel to gather together and pray for him. I wonder how it felt to be Rhonda, to hear Peter's voice at the door. And I wonder who I can think of to pray for this week. And as always, I wonder what you wonder. Have a great week.